Their intelligence has become dull. Thus, they are busy collecting the ingredients for ritualistic ceremonies that yield only temporary benefits, such as elevation to Swargaloka for material happiness. They are not attracted to the Sankirtan movement. Instead, they are interested in Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Purport by His Divine Grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Since one may easily achieve the highest success by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one may ask why there are so many Vedic ritualistic ceremonies and why people are attracted to them. This verse answers that question. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Vedascha sarvir aham eva vidya. The real purpose of studying the Vedas is to approach the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Unfortunately, unintelligent people, bewildered by the grandeur of Vedic yajnas, want to see gorgeous sacrifices performed. They want Vedic mantras chanted and huge amounts of money spent for such ceremonies. Sometimes we have to observe the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies to please such unintelligent men. Recently, when we established a large Krishna Balarama temple in Vrindavana, we were obliged to have Vedic ceremonies enacted by Brahmanas because the inhabitants of Vrindavana, especially the Smarta Brahmanas, would not accept Europeans and Americans as bona fide Brahmanas. Thus, we had to engage Brahmanas to perform costly yajnas. In spite of these yajnas, the members of our society perform Sankirtana loudly with mridangas, and I consider the Sankirtana more important than the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Both the ceremonies and the Sankirtana were going on simultaneously. The ceremonies were meant for persons interested in Vedic rituals for elevation to heavenly planets. Jadi Krita Matir Madhu Pushpitayam. Whereas the Sankirtana was meant for the pure devotees interested in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We would simply have performed Sankirtana, but then the inhabitants of Vrindavana would not have taken the installation ceremony seriously. As explained here, the Vedic performances are meant for those whose intelligence has been dulled by the flowery language of the Vedas, which describe fruitive activities mentioned to elevate one to the higher planets. Especially in this age of Kali, Sankirtana alone is sufficient. That's very good. If the members of our temples in the different parts of the world simply continue Sankirtana before the deity, especially before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they will remain perfect. There is no need of any other performances. Nevertheless, to keep oneself clean in habits and mind, deity worship and other regulative principles are required. Srila Jiva Goswami says that although Sankirtana is sufficient for the perfection of life, the archana or worship of the deity in the temple must continue in order that the devotee's place may stay clean and pure. Hmm. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur therefore recommended that one follow both processes simultaneously. We strictly follow his principle of performing deity worship and Sankirtana along parallel lines. This we should continue. Okay, Prabhupada, that's what we're going to do. Text 26. Considering all these points, therefore, intelligent men decide to solve all problems by adopting the devotional service of chanting the holy name of the Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart and who is a mind of all auspicious qualities. Such persons are not within my jurisdiction for punishment. Generally, they never commit sinful activities. But even if mistake or because of bewilderment or illusion, they sometimes commit sinful acts. They are protected from sinful reactions because they always chant the Hare Krishna mantra, Hari Bol. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura quotes the following verse from the prayers of Lord Brahma, Bhagavatam 10:14-29. Atapite deva padam vujadvaya prasada lesan grihita evahi chanati tatvam bhagavan mahim no na chanya eko pi chinam vichinvan. The purport is that even though one is a very learned scholar of the Vedic Shastras, he may be completely unaware of the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his name, fame, qualities, and so forth. Whereas one who is not a great scholar can understand the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he somehow or other becomes a pure devotee of the Lord by engaging in devotional service. Therefore, this verse, spoken by Yamaraj, says, Evam vim rishya sudiyo bhagavati. Those who engage in the loving service of the Lord become sudhya, intelligent. But this is not so of a Vedic scholar who does not understand Krishna's fame, qualities, fame, and qualities. A pure devotee is one whose intelligence is clear. He is truly thoughtful because he engages in the service of the Lord, not as a matter of show, but with love, with his mind, words, and body. Non-devotees may make a show of religion, but it is not very effective because although they ostentatiously attend a temple or church, they are thinking of something else. Yes. Sense gratification and so forth. Such persons are neglecting their religious duty and are punishable by Yamaraja. But a devotee who commits sinful acts, which he may do unwillingly or accidentally because of his former habits, is excused. That is the value of the Sankirtan movement. Haribol.
Haribo.
Jai. Text 27. My dear servant, please do not approach such devotees, for they have fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are equal to everyone, and their narrations are sung by the demigods and the inhabitants of Siddhaloka. Please do not even go near them. They are always protected by the club of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, Lord Brahma and I, and even the time factor, are not competent to chastise them. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. In effect, Yamaraja warned his servant, my dear servant, despite what you may have done previously to disturb the devotees, henceforth you should stop. The actions of devotees who have surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord and who constantly chant the holy name of the Lord are praised by the demigods and the residents of Siddhaloka. Those devotees are so respectable and exalted that Lord Vishnu personally protects them with the club in his hand. Therefore, regardless of what you have done this time, henceforth, you should not approach such devotees. Otherwise, you will be killed by the club of Lord Vishnu. Oh my God. There's no way of getting away from that. This is my warning. Lord Vishnu has a club and chakra to punish non-devotees. Do not risk punishment by attempting to disturb the devotees. Not to speak of you, if even Lord Brahma or I were to punish them, Lord Vishnu would punish us. Therefore, do not disturb the devotees any further. Okay? Better watch out. Text 28. Okay, 1 second. Paramahansa. Sorry. Paramahansas are exalted persons who have no taste for material enjoyment and who drink the honey of the Lord's lotus feet. I like that. The honey of the Lord's lotus feet. My dear servants, bring to me for punishment only persons who are averse to the taste of that honey, who do not associate with Paramahansas, and who are attached to family life and worldly enjoyment, which form the path to hell. Okay. 1 second. Fix this. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. After warning Yamadutas not to approach the devotees, Yamaraja now indicates who is to be brought before him. He specifically advises the Yamadutas to bring him the materialistic persons who are attracted to household life merely for sex. Uh-oh. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yam Maitunadi Vihamedi Sukham, he to chum. People are attached to household life for sex only. They are always harassed in many ways by their material engagements, and their only happiness is that after working very hard all day, at night they sleep and indulge in sex. Nidraya hridyate naktam vayena chava vaya. At night, materialistic householders sleep or indulge in sex life. Diva Chartehaya Rajan Kutumba Baranenava. During the day, they are busy trying to find out where money is. And if they get money, they spend it to maintain their families. Yamaraja specifically advises these servants to bring these persons to him oh boy, for punishment and not to bring the devotees, who always lick the honey at the lotus feet of the Lord, who are equal to everyone and who try to preach Krishna consciousness because of sympathy for all living entities. Very nice. Devotees are not liable to punishment by the by Yamaraja, but persons who have no information of Krishna consciousness cannot be protected by their material life of so-called family enjoyments. Srimad Bhagavatam says 2.1.4. Daha Katya Kalatradis Atma Sanyesa Asatva Asat Sri Api Tesam Pramato Nidanam Pasyan Api Napasyati. Such persons complacently believe that their nations, communities, or families can protect them, unaware that all such fallible soldiers, that's a beautiful phrase, fallible soldiers, that means that they're always capable, that they're always uh, vulnerable to be killed easily. Unaware that all such fallible soldiers will be destroyed in due course of time. In conclusion, one should try to associate with persons who engage in devotional service 24 hours a day. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Text 29. My dear servants, please bring to me only those sinful persons who do not use their tongues to chant the holy name and qualities of Krishna, whose hearts do not remember the lotus feet of Krishna even once, and whose heads do not bow down even once before Lord Krishna. Send me those who do not perform their duties toward Vishnu, which are the only duties to and only duties in
Human life.
human life. Please bring me all such fools and rascals. Okay, this is getting to be now the truth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Vishnu Prityan is very important in this verse because the purpose of human life is to please Lord Vishnu. Okay. Varnashrama Dharma is also meant for that purpose. As stated in the Vishnu Purana 3.8.9, Varnashrama Charavata Purushena Pura Purmam Vishnur Aradyate Panta Nanya Tatusha Karanam. Human society is meant to follow strictly the Varnashram Dharma, which divides society into four social divisions: Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, and four spiritual divisions: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. Varnashrama Dharma easily brings one nearer to Lord Vishnu, who is the only true objective in human society. Nate vitu swartagatim hi Vishnum. Unfortunately, however, people do not know that their self interest is to return home, back to Godhead, or to approach Lord Vishnu. Durashaya ye bahir artha manina. Instead, they are simply bewildered by they are simply bewildered. Every human being is expected to perform duties meant for approaching Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Yamaraja advises the Yamadutas to bring him those persons who have forgotten their duties toward Vishnu. Akrita Vishnu Krityam, one who does not chant the holy name of Vishnu or Krishna, who does not bow down to the deity of Vishnu, and who does not remember the lotus feet of Vishnu, is punishable by Yamaraja. In summary, all Vaishnavas, meaning non-Vaishnavas, persons unconcerned with Lord Vishnu are punishable by Yamaraja. So you have Vaishnavas and you have Avaishnavas. The Avaishnavas are the ones that are unconcerned with Lord Vishnu and punishable by Yamaraja. Text 30. Then Yamaraja, considering himself and his servants to be offenders, spoke as follows, begging pardon from the Lord. O my Lord, my servants have surely committed a great offense by arresting a Vaishnava such as Hajamila. O Narayana, O Supreme and Oldest Person, please forgive us. Because of our ignorance, we fail to recognize Ajamila as a servant of your Lordship. And thus we have certainly committed a great offense. Therefore, with folded hands, we beg your pardon. My Lord, since you are supremely merciful and are always full of good qualities, please pardon us. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Yamaraja took upon himself the responsibility for the offense committed by his servants. If the servant of an establishment makes a mistake, the establishment takes the responsibility for it. Okay, now that's a very important principle. Let's read that again. If the servant of an establishment makes a mistake, the establishment takes responsibility for it. Although Yamaraja is above offenses, his servants, practically with his permission, went to arrest Hajimila, which was a great offense. The Nyaya Shastra confirms Britya Parade Swamino Danda. If a servant makes a mistake, the master is punishable because he is responsible for the offense. Taking this seriously, Yamaraja, along with his servants, prayed with folded hands to be excused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Okay, well, we got to pay attention to this statement because basically it's saying that if a servant makes a mistake, the master is punishable. That is not what you would call uh, practiced. Uh, Usually, if the servant makes a mistake, the servant is punishable. But if, here it's saying, taking the not Nyaya Shastra confirms, Pritya Parade Swamino Danda. If a servant makes a mistake, the master is punishable because he is responsible for the offense. Taking this seriously, Yamaraja, along with his servants, prayed with folded hands to be excused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Okay, text 31. Sukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is able to uproot even the reactions of the greatest sins. Therefore, the chanting of the Sankirtan movement is the most auspicious activity in the entire universe. Please try to understand this so that others will take it seriously. Wonderful. Let me read that again. Sukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is able to uproot even the reactions of the greatest sins. Therefore, the chanting of the Sankirtan movement is the most auspicious activity in the entire universe. Please try to understand this so that others will take it seriously. Wow, very important. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We should note that although Ajamila chanted the name of Narayan imperfectly, he was delivered from all sinful reactions. The chanting of the holy name is so auspicious that it can free everyone from reactions of sinful activities. One should not conclude that one may continue to sin with the intention of chanting Hare Krishna to neutralize the reactions. There are people like that. There's this one devotee, he um, he had sex with one lady who was also a devotee. And he stayed away from the temple for a couple days. And when he came back, I asked him, I said, Where were you? How come you didn't come back from Sankirtan? He said, Oh, I was preaching. I said, You were preaching? who were you preaching to? He said, oh, some nice people. I said, were these people men or were they women? He said, what do you care what they were? I said, no, it's important for me to know. Were they men or women? He said, well, they were women. And I said, and you stayed away 3 days preaching to women. Is that what you're saying? He said, yes. I said, that is complete nonsense. And then he said, what do you mean it's not? I was preaching. Don't you understand? I was preaching. Yeah, I understand that you were having sex. I understand. And then he got really upset. But actually, he got one woman pregnant, right? And the woman that was, and the child that was born was uh, not crippled, but had a uh, he had some type of serious
Handicap.
huh?
Handicap.
Handicap. Yeah.
Mm.
So I mean, the whole thing was really terrible. And of course, we didn't know the woman uh, gave birth to a child that was handicapped. So we didn't know overnight. We had to wait 8 months or 9 months or 10 months. And then it turns out that the child was handicapped terribly. So it says, one should not conclude that one may continue to sin with the intention of chanting Hare Krishna to neutralize the reactions. Yeah, well, so one of these people who uh, stayed away from the temple for several days and then showed up actually made a woman pregnant. And he had no intention to marry her. And this is what's being said here, actually. It says, one should not conclude. And then when I talked to this devotee, I said, where were you? He said, oh, I was preaching. I said, you were preaching. Well, was it to a man or to a woman? He said, it was a woman. So you were preaching for 3 days to a woman? Is that why you didn't come back to the temple? And he said, yes. I said, that is nonsense. And you are nonsense. Right? I got really, upset. Well, after some time, it turned out that he made this woman pregnant. Not only that, when the child was born, he was handicapped. The whole thing was a disaster. We didn't understand right away, but when the child turned out to be seriously handicapped, it was due to the sinful activity of this devotee. You know, it's terrible, terrible thing. But it didn't happen overnight. Say, he had sex with this woman, and then when she finally gave birth, it turned out the child was seriously handicapped. It was terrible. So it says, one should not conclude that one may continue to sin with the intention of chanting Hare Krishna to neutralize the reaction. Well, this devotee who got that woman pregnant, and then the child turned out to be handicapped, he told me, and before we knew that the child was handicapped and so forth, he told me, I know how to chant Hare Krishna.
Right.
I said, what? I said, what does that mean? So it meant that, he said, well, all the sins that I've committed, I can just chant Hare Krishna and they'll all go away because I know how to chant Hare Krishna. I said, this is nonsense. I said, you're not going to be free of sinful activity because you're purposely doing it. You purposely know that what you're doing is wrong and you're using the so-called so-called idea that by chanting Hare Krishna you can whitewash your sins. I said that is not Krishna consciousness. You cannot use the holy name for uh, whitewashing your what you would call premeditated sins. Rather, one should be very careful to be free from all sins and never think of counteracting sinful activities by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. There it is, right there. For this is another offense. Wow. We should take this very seriously. If by chance a devotee accidentally performs some simple activity, the Lord will excuse him. But one should not intentionally perform sinful acts. And that's what I told this devotee, when he told me, but I know how to chant Hare Krishna. Meaning, he thought that he could sin and he could whitewash the sin by chanting Hare Krishna. In other words, he did it purposely. That means that he's a nonsense person, and he was a nonsense person. And he did get a woman pregnant, and the child turned out to be uh, handicapped. And the whole thing was horrible, right? But it didn't happen right away. I mean, after he had illicit sex with this girl, then she gave birth to the baby after 10 months. Then the baby turns out to be handicapped for the rest of his life. The whole thing was terrible. It was terrible. Okay. Therefore, it says, if by chance a devotee accidentally performs some sinful activity, the Lord will excuse him. But one should not intentionally perform sinful acts. That means premeditated sinful acts are not whitewashed. They're considered to be very, very sinful. Okay, text 32. Shenvatam Grinatam Viryani, and so forth. It says, one who constantly hears and chants the holy name of the Lord and hears and chants about his activities can very easily attain the platform of pure devotional service, which can cleanse the dirt from one's heart. One cannot achieve such purification merely by observing vows and performing Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Well, you usually think that someone who has vows and keeps them and performs ritualistic ceremonies is not a bad person. But it depends on what the purpose is. If the purpose of his so-called vows and ritualistic ceremonies is to whitewash premeditated sins, then it doesn't work because it's premeditated. If it's accidental, then it can be excused. But if it's premeditated sense gratification, then that is not whitewashing anything. It's getting deeper into sinful activity. Purport, let's see what Prabhupada says here. One may very easily practice chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord and thus become ecstatic and spiritual. Padma Purana states, Nama Parada Yuktanam Naman Yeva Haranti Agam Avishranti Par Yuktani Tani Evarta Karani Cha. Even if one chants the Hare Krishna mantra offensively, one can avoid offenses by continuous chanting without deviation. One who becomes accustomed to this practice will always remain in a pure transcendental position, untouchable by sinful reactions. Sukadeva Goswami especially requested King Pariksit to note this fact very carefully. There is no profit, however, in executing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. By performing such activities, one may go to the higher planetary system. But as stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.21, Shine Punye Martyalokam Vishanti. When the period of one's enjoyment is in the heavenly planets and is terminated because of the limited extent of the results of one's pious activities, one must return to earth. Thus, there is no use in endeavoring to travel up and down in the universe. It is better to chant the holy name of the Lord so that one may become fully purified and eligible to return home back to Godhead. That is the aim of life, and that is the perfection of life. Okay, so now there's a problem here, and that is if we use the chanting of Hare Krishna to, in a sense, whitewash our premeditated sins, that is actually an aparad. And it will not go without punishment. But someone would say, "Boy, I was chanting Hare Krishna." But the purpose was to whitewash a premeditated sin. So that's not going to be forgiven because it's premeditated and because it was what you would say uh, it was done purposely. It wasn't done accidentally, it was done purposely. So that type of so-called sinful activity is not forgiven because it's premeditated and it's done purposely for sense gratification. Therefore, it says here, it is better to chant the holy name of the Lord so that one may become fully purified and eligible to return home back to Godhead. That is the aim of life, and that is the perfection of life. Yeah, so it's not that, well, I will premeditatedly perform a sinful activity, but I'll try to whitewash it by chanting Hare Krishna. That is not Krishna consciousness. Text 33. Yeah, there was this one guy, he was a devotee, but not really a good devotee. He didn't come home for 3 days, right? He lived in the temple, but he disappeared for 3 days. When he came back, I said, "And where were you?" He said, "Oh, I was preaching." I said, "You were preaching. So who were you preaching to?" He said, "Oh, very nice people." I said, "Were the people men or women?" He said, it was a woman. I said, "Oh." And I said that this is not acceptable. He said, "What do you mean it's not acceptable?" I said, "Because uh, you stayed away from the temple purposely to what? Preach to a woman?" I said, "That's nonsense." And he really got angry at me. But I was right. I told him this is nonsense. And the truth came out. But it took time. That woman that he was so called preaching to got pregnant. And not only that, the child that was born was crippled, was deformed and crippled. Right? It's terrible. The whole thing was terrible. But you didn't know right away. I mean, I was suspicious, but we had to wait 9, 10 months, and the child comes out to be very, very severely crippled. And it was terrible. Okay. Devotees who always lick the honey from the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. do not care at all for material activities, which are performed under the three modes of material nature and which bring only misery. Indeed, so genuine devotees do not care for all the material activities which are performed under the three modes of material nature and which bring only misery. Indeed, devotees never give up the lotus feet of Krishna to return to material activities. Others, however, who are addicted to Vedic rituals because they have neglected the service of the Lord's lotus feet and are enchanted by lusty desires, sometimes perform acts of atonement. There it is. Nevertheless, being incompletely purified, incompletely purified, they return to sinful activities again and again. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. A devotee's duty is to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. One may sometimes chant with offenses and sometimes without offense. But if one seriously adopts this process, he will achieve perfection, which cannot be achieved through Vedic ritualistic ceremonies of atonement. Persons who are attached to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies but do not believe in devotional service, who advise atonement but do not appreciate the chanting of the Lord's holy name, fail to achieve the highest perfection. Devotees, therefore, being completely detached from material enjoyment, never give up Krishna consciousness for Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Those who are attached to Vedic ritualistic ceremonies because of lusty desires are subjected to the tribulations of material existence again and again. Maharaja Parikshit has compared their activities to Kunjara Socha, the bathing of an elephant. What is the bathing of an elephant? The elephant bathes in the water, and when it comes out, it throws dust and dirt all over his body. So that is not taking a bath seriously. But that's what elephants do. They'll go, they'll bathe, they come out of the water, and then they'll throw some dirt on their body. Okay, so those who are attached to Vedic ritualistic ceremonies because of lusty desires are subjected to the tribulations of material existence again and again. Maharaj Parikshit has compared their activities to Kunjara Socha, the bathing of an elephant, who will bathe, and as soon as he comes out of the water, he'll throw dust and dirt all over his body. Okay, text number 34. What time is it? I still have a little bit of time.
Yes, Maharaj.
After hearing from the mouth of their masters about the extraordinary glories of the Lord and his name, fame, attributes, the Yamadutas were struck with wonder. Since then, as soon as they see a devotee, they fear him and dare not look at him again. Wow. That's the Yamadutas. The Krishna Dutas are not afraid of seeing a devotee, but the Yamadutas are. Purport. Since this incident, the Yamadutas have given up the dangerous behavior of approaching a devotee. For the Yamadutas, a devotee is dangerous. Text 35. When the great sage Agastya, the son of Kumbha, was residing in the Malaya hills and worshiping the Supreme Personality Godhead, I approached him and he explained to me this confidential history. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purports of the sixth canto, third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Yamaraja Instructs His Messenger. Okay, so yeah, so what is our takeaway? A devotee's duty is to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. One may sometimes chant with offenses and sometimes without offenses. But if one seriously adopts the process, he will achieve perfection, which cannot be achieved through Vedic ritualistic ceremonies of atonement. Yeah, the real, let's say, practice of devotee is to always chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra sincerely. Persons who are attracted to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies but do not believe in devotional service, who advise atonement but do not appreciate the chanting of the Lord's holy name, fail to achieve the highest perfection. Devotees, therefore, being completely detached from material enjoyment, never give up Krishna consciousness for Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. In other words, the devotees never give up chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in order to practice so-called yagyas or different types of uh, activities of atonement. And therefore, it says, uh, others, however, who are addicted to Vedic rituals because they have neglected the service of the Lord's lotus feet and are enchanted by lusty desires, sometimes perform acts of atonement. Nevertheless, being incompletely purified, they return to sinful activities again and again. Wow, amazing statement. Okay, so is our time over?
We have time.
We have. Good. Chapter 4, the Hamsa Guya prayers offered to the Lord by Prajapati Daksha. Second. After Maharaj Parikshit appealed to Sukadeva Goswami to describe in further detail the creation of the living entities within this universe, Sukadeva Goswami informed him that when the Prachetas, the 10 sons of Parsunabharti, entered the sea to execute austerities, the planet Earth was neglected because of the absence of a king. Naturally, many weeds and unnecessary trees grew, and the food grains were produced, and no food grains were produced. Indeed, all the land became like a forest. When the 10 Prachetas came out of the sea and saw the entire world full of trees, they were very angry with the trees and decided to destroy them all to rectify the situation. Yeah, so when you have trees that don't give fruit, they just give trees, and there's something wrong. Right? There are places that are just full of trees, but there are no fruits. Thus, the Prachetas created wind and fire to burn the trees to ash. Soma, however, the king of the moon and the king of all vegetation, forbade the Prachetas to destroy the trees, since the trees are the source of fruit and flowers for all living beings. Just to satisfy the Prachetas, Soma gave them a beautiful girl born of from Locha, Apsara. By the semen of all the Prachetas, Taksha was born of that girl. In the beginning, Daksha created all the demigods, demons, and human beings. But when he found the population not increasing properly, he took sannyasa and went to Vindhya mountain, where he underwent severe austerities and offered Lord Vishnu a particular prayer known as Hamsa Guya, by which Lord Vishnu became very pleased with him. The contents of the prayer were as follows. Okay. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, Lord Hari, is the controller of both the living entities and the material nature. He is self sufficient and self effulgent. As the subject matter of perception is not the cause of our perceiving senses, so the living entity, although within his body, does not cause his eternal friend, the Supersoul, who is the cause of creation of all things, because of the living entity's ignorance. His senses are engaged with material objects. Since the living entity is alive, he can understand the creation of this material world to some extent, but he cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond the conception of the body, mind, and intelligence. Nevertheless, great sages who are always in meditation can see the personal form of the Lord within their hearts. Okay, okay, that is part of a statement, and it's not finished. Since an ordinary living being is materially contaminated, his words and intelligence are also material. Therefore, he cannot ascertain the Supreme Personality of Godhead by manipulating his material senses. The conception of God derived through the material senses is inaccurate because the Supreme Lord is beyond the material senses. But when one engages his senses in devotional service, the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead is revealed on the platform of the soul. When the Supreme Godhead becomes the aim of one's life, one is said to have attained spiritual knowledge. That's nice. The Supreme Brahman is the cause of all causes because he originally existed before the creation. He is the original cause of everything, both material and spiritual, and his existence is independent. However, the Lord has a potency called avidya, the illusory energy, which induces the false arguer to think himself perfect, and which induces the illusory energy to bewilder the conditioned soul. Okay, that's a very significant statement. For all those people who are arguers, take seriously what's being said here. That supreme Brahman, the super soul, is very affectionate to his devotees. To bestow mercy upon them, he discloses his form, name, attributes, and qualities to be worshipped within this material world. Unfortunately, however, those who are materially absorbed worship various demigods. As the air passes over a lotus flower and carries the scent of the flower with it, or as the air sometimes carries dust and therefore assumes colors, the Supreme Personality Godhead appears as the various demigods according to the desire of his various foolish worshippers. According to the um, desires of his various foolish worshippers. But actually, he is the supreme truth, Lord Vishnu, to fulfill the desires of his devotees. He appears in various incarnations, and therefore there is no need to worship the demigods. Okay, there it is. There is no need to worship the demigods. But yet, so many Hindus are worshiping so many different demigods. That is not permitted. That is not good. Being very satisfied by the prayers of Daksha, Lord Vishnu appeared before Daksha, and with 8 arms. Wow, 8 arms. The Lord was dressed in yellow garments and had a blackish complexion. Understanding that Daksha was very eager to follow the path of enjoyment, that's not the right path. The Lord awarded him the potency to enjoy the illusory energy. That is not very good. The Lord offered him the daughter of Panchajana, named Akshikri, Ashikni, Ashikni, who was suitable for Maharaj Daksha to enjoy in sex. Indeed, Daksha received his name because he was very expert in sex life. After awarding his benedictions, Lord Vishnu disappeared. Is that good or bad? I think it's very bad. Let's see. The blessed king said to Sukadeva Goswami, my dear Lord, the demigods, demons, human beings, nagas, beasts, and birds were created during the reign of Swayambhu Brahman. You have spoken about this creation briefly in the third canto. Now, I wish to know about it elaborately. I also wish to know about the potency of the Supreme Personality Godhead by which he brought about the secondary creation. Text number 3. Sukadeva Goswami said, O great sage, assembled in Naimisharanya, after the great yogi Sukadeva Goswami heard King Parikshit's inquiry, he praised it and thus replied, Shri Sukhavachan. Sukadeva Goswami said, when the 10 sons of Varshnavati emerged from the waters in which they were performing austerities, they saw that the entire surface of the world was covered by trees. That means there's a problem. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada. When King Varshnavati was performing Vedic rituals in which the killing of animals was recommended, Narada Muni, out of compassion, advised him to stop. Parsenabhari understood Narada properly and then left the kingdom to perform austerities in the forest. His 10 sons, however, were performing austerities within the water, and therefore there was no king to see to the management of the world. When the 10 sons, the Prachetas, came out of the water, they saw that the earth was overrun with trees. When the government neglects agriculture, which is necessary for the production of food, the land becomes covered with unnecessary trees. Of course, many trees are useful because they produce fruits and flowers, but many other trees are unnecessary. They could be used as fuel and the land cleared and used for agriculture. When the government is negligent, less grain is produced. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1844, Krishigo Raksha Vanijam Vaisha Karma Swabhavajam. The proper engagements for Vaishyas, according to their nature, are to farm and to protect cows. The duty of the government and the Kshatriyas is to see that the members of the third class, the Vaishyas, who are neither Brahmanas nor Kshatriyas, are thus properly engaged. Kshatriyas are meant to protect human beings, whereas Vaishyas are meant to protect useful animals, especially cows. Oh, yeah, because if they protect cows, cows can give milk, which is the ideal food for a human being. Text 5. Are we finished there? I think our time is up,
Yes.
right? Okay, all right, we'll stop right there. Let's stop on cows.
Hare Krishna.
Because we love cows. Okay, are there any questions, my dear devotees? Any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, then we are going to hear the takeaway for today. Yeah, this is very good. One second. Yeah, so our takeaway for today is the Hamsa Guya prayers offered to the Lord by Prajapati Daksha. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read part of it. And it says, in the beginning, Daksha created all the demigods, demons, and human beings. But when he found the population not increasing properly, he took sannyasa and went to Vindhya Mountain, where he underwent severe austerities and offered Lord Vishnu a particular prayer known as Hamsa Guya, by which Lord Vishnu became very pleased with him. The contents of the prayer were as follows. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, Lord Hari, is the controller of both the living entities and the material nature. He is self-sufficient and self-effulgent, and the subject matter of, perception is not the cause of our perceiving, it's not the cause of our perceiving senses. So the living entity, although within his body, does not cause his eternal friend, the supersoul, who is the cause of creation of all the senses. Okay, let me read that again. It says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the supersoul, Lord Hari, is the controller of both the living entities and the material nature. Okay. He is self-sufficient and self-effulgent. As the subject matter of perception is not the cause of our perceiving senses, so the living entity, although within his body, does not cause his eternal friend, the supersoul, who is the cause of creation of all the senses. Because of the living entity, ignorance, because of the living entity's ignorance, his senses are engaged with material objects. Since the living entity is alive, he can understand the creation of the material world to some extent, but he cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond the conception of the body, mind, and ignorance. And I'm sorry, body, mind, and intelligence. Nevertheless, great sages who are always in meditation can see the personal form of the Lord within their hearts. Okay. Since an ordinary living being is materially contaminated, his words and intelligence are also material. Therefore, he cannot ascertain the Supreme Personality of Godhead by manipulating his material senses. The conception of God derived through the material senses is inaccurate because the Supreme Lord is beyond the material senses. But when one engages, this is the main point. When one engages in his senses in devotional service, the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead is revealed on the platform of the soul, not on the platform of matter. When that Supreme Godhead becomes the aim of one's life, one is said to have attained spiritual knowledge. The Supreme Brahman is the cause of all causes because he originally existed before the creation. He is the original cause of everything, both material and spiritual, and his existence is independent. However, the Lord has a potency called avidya, the illusory energy, which induces the false arguer. Oh, and I like that. The false arguer to think himself perfect, and which induces the illusory energy to bewilder the conditioned soul. That Supreme Brahman, the Supersoul, is very affectionate to his devotees. To bestow mercy upon them, he discloses his form, name, attributes, and qualities to be worshipped within this material world. So it says here, I think I missed a sentence or something. However, the Lord has a potency called avidya, the illusory energy, which induces the false arguer to think himself perfect, and which induces the illusory energy to bewilder the conditioned soul. The Supreme Brahman, the Supersoul, is very affectionate to his devotees. To bestow mercy upon them, he discloses his form, name, attributes, and qualities to be worshipped within this material world. Okay, so Krishna is the cause of all causes because he originally existed before the creation. So he is the original cause of everything, both material and spiritual. And his existence personally is independent. However, the Lord has a potency called avidya, the illusory energy, which induces, meaning forces, the false arguer to think himself perfect and which induces the illusory energy to bewilder the conditioned soul. Beware of the false arguer and beware of the illusory energy to bewilder, to think oneself or himself perfect, and which induces the illusory energy to bewilder the conditioned soul. That Supreme Brahman, the Super Soul, is very affectionate to his devotees. To bestow mercy upon them, he discloses his form, name, attributes, and qualities to be worshipped within the material world. So if we simply focus on worshiping Lord Krishna and uh, become cognizant of his form, name, attributes, and qualities that should be worshipped within this material world, then one is free from what's called avidya. There's vidya and avidya. Avidya means the illusory energy, which induces the false arguer to think himself perfect and which induces the illusory energy to bewilder the conditioned soul. Wow. So there's so many people like that. They are under the illusory energy and they're bewildered and conditioned and they're bewildered uh, and uh, influenced by the conditioned soul. Okay, we'll stop right there. It's very important to become a sincere devotee and avoid nonsense people and always be humble and meek, but not be a wimp. One has to be like fire when someone insults the Lord or his devotees. But one should be very gentle and kind to the devotees. Right? But anyone who blasphemes the devotees or in some way or other hurts the devotees, uh, the genuine devotee will stop that person or those group of people and be like thunder to protect the devotees. Okay, well, very, very good. Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? I like this statement very much. It says, the Lord has a potency called avidya, the illusory energy, which induces, in other words, brings into, it forces someone to be a false arguer and to think himself perfect, and which induces the illusory energy to bewilder the conditioned soul. Now, have you had the experience of a false arguer? Yes, there are many of them. So they're under the potency of avidya, the illusory energy, which induces the false arguer to think himself perfect and which induces the illusory energy to bewilder the conditioned souls. Yeah, all you have to do is open the television or listen to the news or hear about what's happening in this place or that place where there's war, and you will find a lot of false arguers, and they are under the influence of avidya, the illusory energy, which induces the false arguer to think himself perfect, and which induces the illusory energy to bewilder the conditioned souls. So I can give you an example of a big time false arguer. What's his name? It's, in, it's always in the news. Um, oh, jeez, I always forget the name of the demons. I don't know why. Um, oh, I'll think about it. I'll think about it. Um, okay, who's in the news all the time? What's his name?
Trump, Maharaj.
Huh?
Trump.
Yeah, Trump. No, there's another one bigger than Trump. A bigger arguer than Trump. Uh, um, oh my God. I always forget the name of demons. Um, all right. Well, we'll leave that for tomorrow. I'll look up the name of that demon. Okay. Thank you very much, my dear devotees. And our takeaway for today is the following. Being very satisfied by the prayers of Daksha, Lord Vishnu appeared before Daksha with 8 arms. The Lord was dressed in yellow garments and had a blackish complexion. Understanding that Daksha was very eager to follow the potency to enjoy the illusory energy, the Lord offered him the daughter of Panchajam, named Asikni, who was suitable for Maharaj Daksha to enjoy in sex. Indeed, Daksha received his name because he was very expert in sex life. After awarding this benediction, Lord Vishnu disappears. Well, what is the takeaway here? One must be very careful about what one desires. If one desires sense gratification and does not stop hankering, that means always thinking about it, always wishing for it, then it's going to happen. And one will get stuck by someone like uh, Asikni, who is a woman who was suitable for Maharaj Daksha to enjoy sex. Indeed, Daksha received his name because he was very expert in sex life. After awarding this benediction, the Lord disappeared. Well, there are different types of benedictions, obviously. So if our only uh, like desire is to serve Krishna, and hopefully with love and devotion, then we're free of all the negative influences. We will not, what you would call, tolerate them. We'll be very ferociously adamant to follow strictly the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, but with love and devotion for the Lord, not to be a what you would call a person who uh, is uh, a what do you call that? A fanatic. No, the devotee is not a fanatic. He doesn't want to see other people suffer, and he's always kind and gentle. He does not excuse what you would call uh, insults to Krishna or the Guru, or insults to genuine devotees. But in general, is very gentle and kind and always engaged in devotional service. That is the type of person one should associate with. However, if someone tries to hurt a genuine devotee, the genuine then the genuine devotees will protect the devotee uh, and prosecute the person who is trying to, uh, let's say, hurt devotees. Okay, so are there any questions or comments? All right, thank you very much, my dear devotees. Please chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And always remember to remain humble and meek in the association of devotees, but also uh, not remain meek and humble when someone hurts a devotee or insults a devotee. At that point, one should be ferocious, like in a Shringadev, to protect devotees and to maintain the purity of Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Thank you, my dear devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.